Okay, so we read till the etiology of thyroiditis. Now starting from the clinical manifestations. Okay, clinical manifestation of thyroiditis. This is from the page number 3411 of Nelson's edition 22. Autoimmune thyroiditis is 4 to 6 times more common in females than in the males. Fine, there are mostly diseases are more common in males, but this is autoimmune thyroiditis is more common in females. It can occur during the first 3 years of life but becomes more common after 6 years of age and reaches its peak incidence during adolescence. So most of the cases are seen during the adolescence. The most common clinical manifestation are goiter and growth deceleration. Goiter is primarily caused by thyroid inflammation and fibrosis. Fine. So, okay, fine. In autoimmune thyroiditis, the most common clinical manifestation are goiter and there will be growth deceleration. And goiter, why is goiter being caused? Because of thyroid inflammation and fibrosis. And it can appear insidiously and may be variable in size. Insidiously is means slowly there will be increase in the thyroid gland insidiously and may be variable in the size. In most patients, the thyroid is diffusely enlarged, firm and non-tender. Fine. How the thyroid gland is? It is enlarged, firm and non-tender. In some patients, the gland may be asymmetric also. Most affected children are euthyroid and asymptomatic. Mostly children are what? Euthyroid and asymptomatic. Children who develop hypothyroidism may be symptomatic, but others may have no symptoms despite the laboratory evidence of overt hypothyroidism. Fine. Usually children will have no symptoms. In some cases, autoimmune thyroiditis can cause transient thyroiditis as a result of autoimmune thyroid destruction. Fine. So called as the Hashimoto's. So what is happening is, in some cases, the autoimmune thyroiditis can cause transient thyroiditis as a result of autoimmune thyroid destruction, so called as the Hashimoto's. Such children may present with manifestation of thyrotoxicosis, that is increase in the thyroid hormones. Fine. Because of thyroid destruction, there is increase in the thyroid hormones, such as tremulousness or irritability, increased sweating and hyperactivity. Ophthalmopathy can occur in autoimmune thyroiditis even in the absence of Graves' disease, although this is rare in childhood. Fine. We know that eye signs are mostly seen in Graves' disease, but in autoimmune thyroiditis also ophthalmopathy can be seen, but it is very rare in childhood. The clinical course of autoimmune thyroiditis is variable. Goiter may persist or regress spontaneously. In autoimmune thyroiditis, goiter happens, we know, and goiter can persist or regress spontaneously. Most children who are euthyroid at presentation remain euthyroid. Fine. But a subset of patients develop hypothyroidism within months or years. Some patients may remain euthyroid, some may develop hypothyroidism. In children who have subclinical hypothyroidism at diagnosis, that is, subclinical means there is elevated TSH with normal T4 and T3. Fine. This is subclinical. So children who have subclinical hypothyroidism, which is approximately 35%, revert back to euthyroidism, and 50% continue to have a subclinical hypothyroidism, and approximately 15% develop overt hypothyroidism, that is elevated serum TSH and subnormal T3 T4 within 5 years. Fine. Only 15% जो है they will have subnormal 3 T4 within 5 years. There are few reliable predictors for progression to hypothyroidism, so periodic monitoring of the TSH level is indicated in children with the autoimmune thyroiditis, because they are growing into something else, right? So we have to monitor if there is free T4 normal, if the free T4 is normal, or if there is a euthyroid state, or if there is a hypothyroid state, so we have to monitor it. Familial clusters of the autoimmune thyroiditis are common, and the incidence in siblings or parents of the affected children may be as high as 25%. The concurrence within the families of patients with autoimmune thyroiditis and Graves' disease reflects a fundamental pathophysiologic relationship. What is happening is, there is a familial clusters. The incidence will be high in siblings or parents of the affected children, that is as high as 25%. So there is a fundamental pathophysiologic relationship among these autoimmune thyroid disorders, right? Like Graves' disease and autoimmune thyroiditis also. Autoimmune thyroiditis is associated with the other autoimmune disorders. Autoimmune thyroiditis occurs in 10% of the patients with type 1 autoimmune polyglandular syndrome, characterized by autoimmune polyendocrinopathy, candidiasis, and ectodermal dysplasia, a rare autosomal recessive disorder caused by pathogenic variant in the autoimmune regulator gene. What is happening is there is something called as the AIRE gene. There is let's read this again. There is something called as the type 1 autoimmune polyglandular syndrome, that is APS1. So, and this autoimmune thyroiditis occurs in 10% of the patients with APS1, which is characterized by this is the short form, right? APECED, that is autoimmune polyendocrinopathy. This was for APE. And from C there is candidiasis and ectodermal dysplasia. Candidiasis and ectodermal dysplasia, APECED. This was happening in APS type 1. It is a rare autosomal recessive disorder caused by the pathologic variant in the AIRE gene. Autoimmune thyroiditis occurs in 70% of the patients with type 2 APS. Fine. It was occurring in 10% only in APS1, but 70% of APS2 patients, including type 1 diabetes mellitus, autoimmune primary adrenal insufficiency, pernicious anemia, vitiligo, and alopecia. TPO antibodies are found in approximately 20% of the white and 4% of the black children with type 1 diabetes mellitus. The onset of APS2 typically occurs in the late childhood or early adulthood. Its cause is unknown but may be related to predisposing genetic factors shared among these autoimmune conditions. Autoimmune thyroiditis has also been described in children with the immune dysregulation polyendocrinopathy, enteropathy, X-linked syndrome, IPEX, including early onset diabetes and colitis. Fine. This was something just you should read once. Autoimmune thyroiditis is common in patients with the celiac disease or certain chromosomal disorders, particularly Turner syndrome and trisomy 21. Males with the Klinefelter syndrome also appear to be increased risk for autoimmune thyroid disease. Fine, now let's move further. There is a table which compares this autoimmune thyroiditis from the other thyroiditis. We will read that. Laboratory and image finding. Thyroid function tests are often normal. What we were reading was thyroiditis. Fine. What we read was, let's see from the starting. We started with thyroiditis. We read there are painful and painless thyroiditis, and then the thyroiditis can present with whatever form it can, like hypo also, hyper also, and euthyroidism also. And then we move further, and for if in painful type NSAIDs was used, and if severe pain was present, we can use steroids. And usually we start with beta blockers for the cardiovascular symptoms until thyrotoxicosis resolves. So in thyroiditis with pain, we read about the acute infections, acute infectious thyroiditis, then subacute thyroiditis, which is also known as the deep Verweyen's thyroiditis, radiation thyroiditis, and palpation or trauma-induced thyroiditis. This was all we did in thyroiditis with pain. Now in thyroiditis without pain, we mainly read about the autoimmune thyroiditis, that is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or chronic lymphocytic thyroiditis. We read about its etiology, clinical manifestation. Now coming to the treatment lab investigations of the autoimmune thyroiditis. This Hashimoto's thyroiditis only. Okay, let's start again. Thyroid function tests are often normal. Elevation of the serum TSS indicates hypothyroidism, which may be subclinical or overt. TPO antibodies are present in most children with autoimmune thyroiditis. This is something that we should know, that TPO antibodies are present in most children with autoimmune thyroiditis. Thyroglobulin antibodies are present in many adolescents but are somewhat less sensitive in young children. Okay. Testing for both the antibodies will detect about 95% of the children with the autoimmune thyroiditis. Antibody levels are lower in children than in the adults, so repeated measurement of the borderline levels may be indicated. Measurement of the thyroid autoantibody level is useful only for diagnosing autoimmune thyroiditis. Antibody levels do not correlate with the thyroid function and should not be monitored routinely for the initial diagnosis. Okay. So So by the level of antibodies, we are just diagnosing the autoimmune thyroiditis, okay? And the level of antibody will not tell us about the thyroid function, that how the thyroid is functioning, right? Let's move further. In adolescent females with the overt hypothyroidism, measurement of TSH receptor antibodies may identify the patients at future risk of having babies with the transient congenital hypothyroidism. So in adolescent females, if we are doing this TSH receptor antibodies, we may identify the patient who are at risk of having babies with the transient congenital hypothyroidism caused by the transplacental passage of TRA antibodies, TRB antibodies, right? That is thyroid receptor binding antibodies. Sorry, TSH receptor binding antibodies. Now coming to the thyroid scintigraphy and ultrasonography usually are not necessary for the diagnosis of autoimmune thyroiditis. If performed, thyroid scintigraphy reveals decreased isotope uptake. Fine, if in thyroid scintigraphy, if done in autoimmune thyroiditis, will show decreased radioiodine isotope uptake, that is patchy and irregular. Thyroid ultrasonography shows diffuse heterogeneous echogenicity and frequently an increased number of the hyperplastic, benign appearing cervical lymph nodes. Fine. In ultrasonography, what will be seen? Diffuse heterogeneous echogenicity and increased number of hyperplastic, benign appearing cervical lymph nodes. Thyroid ultrasound is indicated for patients with a palpable thyroid nodule or significant thyroid asymmetry. Fine. So in which patients we have to go for ultrasound thyroid, ultrasound neck, that is thyroid ultrasound is indicated in patients with palpable thyroid nodule. We are able to palpate a nodule, okay, and there is significant thyroid asymmetry. We will read this table in the last. Now let's move further about the treatment in autoimmune thyroiditis. If hypothyroidism is overt, that is elevated TSH and low free T4, or symptomatic, treatment with the levothyroxine is indicated at dose specific to the size and age. Goiter may decrease in size but can persist for years. In a euthyroid patient, treatment with the levothyroxine is unlikely to significantly decrease the goiter size. Right, if the patient is already euthyroid, so and we are supplementing the thyroxine, so there is decreased chance that the goiter size will decrease significantly, and the dose of levothyroxine sufficient to suppress the TSH should be avoided because of potential adverse effect. Because autoimmune thyroiditis is self-limited in some instances, the particular need for continued therapy may be re-evaluated periodically. Right, autoimmune thyroiditis is what? Self-limiting. So if we are continuing the therapy, they should be re-evaluated periodically, particularly after growth and pubertal development are completed. Untreated euthyroid patients should have periodic monitoring for risk of progression to hypothyroidism. Right, if we are not treating the euthyroid patients, then we should monitor them at least so that they don't go into hypothyroidism. There is some controversy about the management of patients with the subclinical hypothyroidism. Right, what is the controversy? Subclinical hypothyroidism has not been demonstrated to have clinically significant adverse effects, but the studies are small and of limited quality. Therefore, observation without treatment is acceptable, but some clinicians prefer to treat until the growth and puberty are complete and then reevaluate their thyroid function. Subclinical was what? That the TSH level was less, but T3 and T4 were normal. So this has not presented clinically yet, but there is TSH decrease, that the gland is working normal because the levels of there will be increase in the levels of TSH and normal T3 T4. This will be happening. So gland is working normally because of increased TSH. So in these patients, some clinicians just follow the observation and follow the patient regularly, but some clinicians prefer to treat in the phase of growth and puberty when more thyroid hormones are required and then re-evaluate after that. Now coming to other causes of the thyroiditis, painless thyroiditis is characterized by transient thyrotoxicosis followed sometimes by hypothyroidism and then recovery. Let's continue from here in the next part.